After watching the video, Time for School Part 1, I noticed some things that I thought were really interesting in comparison to westernized culture. The first thing that I noticed was that kids seem to be a lot more grateful for education in third world countries. Where they've seen life harder than we have, they realize that education is the way out of poverty. And since we've been talking about poverty this week, that's a big deal because these kids are really the future and the opportunity to break the generation the generational continuation of poverty. Like Jefferson, for example, he grew up in a drug lord area where the economy's run by drugs, gangs, and there's gunfights all the time. Like, they even talk about his older friend ends up selling drugs. And you can tell that he really has a love for education, but he is discouraged by the fact that they hold him back a grade. I think that it's really good that they're getting kids in Brazil to go through elementary school through a program of paying their families for a subsidy for their kids going to school. Because the reason lots of times that kids in poverty stricken areas stay home is because they they're needed by their families to help provide work or to take care of younger children or the house. And this is a big deal because when they have that money, they can use it to do the same thing, whether it is to buy more food, hire a babysitter. This is actually a really good program and one that I think would be helpful to implement in many developing countries. Looking at some of the other children, such as the girl from Afghanistan, I noticed some other things that there's obviously a gender gap between males and females in schooling. And while this is starting to close a little bit, it's still significant in developing countries. The fact that females are supposed to stay home and do the chores, cook, clean, take care of their families is not necessarily a bad thing, but on the other hand, females becoming educated is important because they're the ones who will teach their children in the future. So by this, it's almost more important for females to be educated than males because they'll be teaching however many future children they have. Another thing that struck me as interesting in this video is the fact that the older adults, such as grandparents, usually grandparents, but sometimes the parents as well, really seem to discourage school, and I think that caused a lot of children to drop out in their middle school ages because they're being taught at home school's for losers. School won't help you with anything in life. You'll be stuck down here no matter what. When they hear that enough, I think they finally, even though they like education and like to learn, just give up on it and fall back into the same trends as their family. I feel that family support would be one of the biggest things in helping people to come out of poverty. If they really want their family to succeed better in later generations, then they should be pushing their kids and telling them that education's a good thing. Because with education, the kids can learn to develop technology, get into a trade rather than farming the rest of their life, because that's one characteristic with poverty is that everything's done for the here and now just to stay alive, to have the sustenance that you need. And so with this, they could learn how to make money other ways to buy the things that they need and yet have more money to start to get out of poverty, buy a better house, start to get plumbing, and for their future, have their kids go to school as well. I think this video is actually really applicable to my country of Tanzania because in Tanzania, only about 59.2% of people are literate and able to read and write in the country. This is showing while there has been some increases, that you still have 40% of adults that can't read and write, and that really is a reason that the country stays in poverty as a whole, is because there's not enough people who can develop trades and develop technology to help bring the country out of this. Their rates of children going through elementary school are actually much better. It's about 85%. But then, just like Brazil, Afghanistan, all these other countries, it drops off big time from there to about 60% for 6th grade through 9th grade. I'm not quite sure what the fix to this would be, but this seems to be the biggest problem in developing countries, is that the dropout rate is so high in the middle school age children because the families don't see the school as important enough anymore because their kids have learned to read and write, which in a lot of cases is more than the parents did. But at the same time, the parents need their kids at home to help provide for them because they're not able to do it themselves. I feel like probably the best way to help with this would be the program that Brazil is implementing of paying subsidies to families to keep their children in school. I feel like really that's probably the best motivator for families to have their kids do education. I mean, it may be a little shallow for people to have to be paid to send their kids to school, but if it works, it's something that will help poverty-stricken countries to overcome these problems and to help people rise up from where they are into a higher social status.